Welcome to William Steele True Crime, and a Massacre in Maine. We have an incredible story, breaking news right now, right up the alley of my co-host Ignacio Esteban, ATF retired. He's written the book on the subject of mass shootings and solutions, and we're going to get rolled right into this because we have an unfolding uh, disaster with a lunatic on the loose. Ignacio, what's going
Yes.
on, Maine?
Yeah, it's a horrible situation. It's probably the worst mass shooting in the history of Maine, in the state of Maine itself. Happened late last night. What's been reported, this individual, person of interest, named Robert Card. But you look at his DL photo, which is behind you, and you look at the picture also behind you of the location where he's shooting at, right there, that happened at a bar and a bowling alley and other locations, where he has there what appears to be an AR-15 style rifle, right? Most likely with high capacity magazines. He looks like he's wearing BDU pants. They're bulging. So I imagine that he has more magazines in there so he can reload. Because this is what people do when they do mass shootings, mass killings. They have lots of magazines, lots of ammunitions, high capacity, so they can kill a lot. And AR-15, where if you even have a handgun, they have a rifle, it's not a fair fight. Because he has easily 100 yards on you, 200 yards on you. You know, maybe with a handgun, maybe have 25, 30. So he can really just pick you off. Boom, boom, boom. And it looks like he also has, from that picture and what I've seen before, an EOTech, like a laser, that it makes it even easier for him to pick up, like he's hunting, right? So what he's doing there, he has him corralled and he's just taking apart people because what looks like with this guy, Robert Card, is that he possibly had mental health issues. Allegedly, it's been reported he had voices talking in his head. He was an institution, a psychiatric institution. He was released. Questions becomes, they knew he had his weapons. He was prior military. I guess he's a reservist, a sergeant. He was a firearms instructor. He was a weapons expert. What went wrong here? What's the failure? The army, the army's going to look back and say, what went wrong here? What happened here? The local authorities, red flag laws. Why wasn't his guns taken away? This is what happens here. But Maine, Bill, is a very independent state. Even though they're blue with national elections since the 90s on, they have voted for Biden and Obama and Clinton's and all that. But the people themselves are very down the middle and they're very pro guns because obviously this is a very open state. You need to protect yourself from the wildlife, right? A lot of different animals out there, bears and wolves and what have you. You have to protect yourself, and you can't rely on the police to come and save you. And I was surprised, but then I looked at the locations. In Maine, it's a constitutional carry state where you don't need a permit to open carry or have a concealed weapon. But if you're in a location where it serves alcohol, then you can't carry your weapon in there. So I think he knew that because you're looking at a bowling alley, which probably has alcohol served there, and a bar. So those are probably locations people have been drinking. They're not really prepared, and that's why he picked them apart. And you mentioned also another location that he was at too. So horrible
Right.
situation here, Bill.
I believe the other
It's
location was a Walmart distribution center. Now,
distribution center.
I will say this. Let's circle back real quick for my audience. The guy over my shoulder is still a person of interest. We don't know if he did it or not, but that's the picture that's been coming up since last night. We were told they went all through his social media. There was such good surveillance. They know who they're looking for. This guy is still wanted. If you're up in Maine and you see this guy or anywhere in the Northeast, they also suspect not only is he amply armed, but that he has a police scanner, so he's able to pretty much monitor where they're getting tips about his whereabouts, so he can move out of the area potentially before the police get there. Now,
Allegedly, I heard that his car was recovered from the shooting, but that he's now on foot somewhere. That's been reported. So he's probably hiding. I imagine being in the military and growing up in that area or living. I don't know if he grew up there, but been there many years. He knows maybe some kind of survivalist. Maybe he knows how to survive in these conditions out there in the woods. He is armed. Maybe he'll put up himself. A lot of these cowards end up killing themselves. Hopefully, he puts himself to end that way. Like you've seen a lot of these cases. You look at Steve Paddock, the worst mass shooter in Las Vegas. The same thing after he does the catches. Once the police come closing in, right? You look at Sandy Hook, the same thing. You look at many of these shooters.
right.
They end up killing themselves.
Of course, they're cowards, and neither myself nor my guest encourage that at
No.
all. We don't encourage violence or taking your own life. We're just giving historical examples and putting this out as a newsworthy
Educational at Virginia
education.
Tech, and the book I wrote, "The Worst Mass Shootings in American History: How to Stop Them Again." I talk historically, going back like 50 years, right, and the patterns that I notice, and some of the solutions. And some of the solutions is you got to fortify. right? You got to make sure since they're armed. But Maine is one of those states. But he knew the location, even with the good laws, constitutional carry laws, bad people, mental health issues, find a way, criminals find a way. And the pattern seems to be we have a mental health crisis in this country.
Right.
I mean, I know occasionally we might get one female here and there, but predominantly is angry males, a certain age group that have a tired, they're snapped, they have health issues, and they have access to a lot of weapons. And this is what they do. And unfortunately, this is what they do.
Remember, everybody, Ignacio recently retired from ATF. So this man knows what he's talking about. He's investigated these type of cases. He studied profiles and case histories and investigated active shooters, including the Beltway sniper. Now, from my point of view, as somebody who was, on the other side of the law for so long before I turned the corner and finally came to my senses, I was a professional jewel and art thief. I did tons of burglaries all over across the United States. And I'll tell you what, the biggest dread and fear that I had, because I always did them with a clear head. A lot of people think, oh, they're strung out, they're doing this or that. In my case, it was mostly for greed. I don't know. I got some kind of vicarious thrill doing these things. A lot of times I didn't even care what I got. I just was all about like, hey, I was able to defeat that lock or that alarm system and get in and get out. And sometimes I wouldn't even look through what I got for days or weeks. But my biggest fear at all times was that there would be an armed homeowner. And worse, I always did upper middle class or very, very affluent areas. But in some of even the upper middle class areas, my biggest concern was an armed citizen. That I would lose my life. I would lose my life. There'd be somebody in there sleeping, and they'd wake up, and that would be over for me. And the other biggest fear was, okay, so a lot of police officers, they work odd hours and they're sleeping during the day, and maybe they're not answering the door or the bell when I ring it just to make sure nobody's in there. So now they hear somebody, their wife's at work, they're sleeping, they hear somebody in the living room, and I get killed, by a guy who knows what he's doing. So I look at it this way. These laws, these Democrat liberal policies, you can't have a gun here, you can't have a gun there. I do agree alcohol and guns don't mix, so maybe that's a wise policy. Right. However, there should be somebody at the door, armed, off-duty police.
You should. You have to.
I know. I remember in Broward, even back in the 80s and 90s, they had like BSO off-duty guys in uniform at the clubs. They had different clubs. Here, I'm in the Midwest, Fort Wayne. A couple of them have that. They'll have like an off-duty officer in there for, I guess he makes a couple $100 for the night.
Yep.
And so the uniform's intimidating to people who are going to do wrong. And then they have a machine where they run everybody's ID to see if you've been banned from the bars and all that.
I think that's a good thing. Those are good things. You have to be proactive.
Yeah. So, in this case, we have a guy now. Please, community beware. The alerts are saying to shelter in place if you're in the area. And I would imagine they're going door to door like the big prison escape in New York, where they would actually ask for permission and clear each house individually to make sure nobody's being held hostage inside their house, by this guy. But I think he had that white vehicle, and there was some indication last night he switched to a black one. At least there was a black pickup being called in for a little while. So this guy's still on a run.
A lot of information out there.
He's a firearms instructor. Now, here's the outrage. And it happens everyone when these are dissected afterwards. Mental health issues, as you said. This man had indicated a desire to shoot up the military base where he was being trained. This is recently, in the last few months. He was also in a psychiatric hospital jail unit voluntarily and admitted all this. Why did they not deactivate him or go and notify ATF or the sheriff or somebody? Hey, this guy's got some serious issues. He's got access. He's got weapons. Can you go and temporarily take his guns? Maybe they did. Who knows? But he expressed this exact desire to do exactly this, and that he had fantasy about it.
Yeah, and even if they took his weapons, it's not hard to get weapons anywhere, right? In the black market and private. I think I've talked about in this show. You go to private sales, you go online, you meet people. Okay, they took those guns, not a problem. It's easy to get more. There's more where that came from. So I'm not sure what the scenario is. If they didn't take his guns, there are going to be questions asked. If they did take it, when they recover, they say, how do we get this one? There's a lot of questions to be asked. What happened here? What went wrong? But right now, as this happens, unfortunately, we say the same thing over and over again. Someone else is being triggered, and there'll be another copycat killer because these people watch, they feed, they see that this guy's famous. They want that fame. They don't care. They're psychopaths, sociopaths. They don't have value of life. They're not mentally well, and they want to do the same thing. So unfortunately, it'll be someone else in a few weeks we'll be talking about who's been triggered.
I was reluctant just now to make this design with his photograph on it for exactly that reason. However, I just found out he was not captured, as was reported a little while ago. He still is on the run. So I want
Yeah,
his
yeah,
picture out there. We're putting it out there as a public service, doing my part. I do have millions of fans, and maybe even if only a couple hundred people see my shows, there's a potential for millions. And I'm going to flood the northeast corridor with this.
yeah. Allegedly, that he also posted on Twitter, now called X, other things too, that about things about he likes mass shootings, and he supported that. I mean, he's just been out there putting different things out there. A lot of red flags came up, especially what he said, what he wanted to do right at the base, and look at his actions now, and especially when he says he allegedly had voices in his head talking to him. People said they allegedly have other personalities or voices and all that. Nothing good's coming down the pipe. Nothing good's coming down.
Right. You need to take him serious. So we
Yeah,
are looking for this guy. Law enforcement is, and I don't think it's going to end well. I agree with you. He'll probably end up being a coward and taking the coward's way out.
yeah,
But I also do see him getting cornered and shooting it out with law enforcement. And because he's so well
possible.
trained, he's military trained and he's a firearms instructor. Unfortunately, I see some more people losing their lives, including possibly law enforcement trying to get this particular guy.
Yeah, and we don't know what the final number is. Right now, it was reported one report was 16, others said 22 killed, and then I heard a lot of people got injured because of the stampede and the panic leaving these places. People fall on the floor and getting stomped on, and people panicking. It was horrible, horrible. The videos you're seeing out there.
Amazing
So,
on a Wednesday night. It wasn't even a busy weekend night at a club or somewhere.
and Lewiston, Maine. What was Lewiston, Maine known for, Bill?
I think it's the second largest city in the state of Maine, Portland being the largest and being
Portland,
the
Lewiston, but people don't know much about Lewiston. It's a beautiful city, other than and of course, I've written books about a lot of things. Lewiston is where they had the famous fight back in the '60s, the rematch between Ali and Sonny Liston, and the famous Phantom Punch, where Liston went down the first round, pretty much through the fight, and Muhammad Ali says to Liston, "You gotta get up, sucker! No one's gonna believe this." Right, and that's if you haven't seen that. So that's what Lewiston was pretty much known for. The Phantom Punch, and now is known from this idiot mass shooter. Now people are going to remember the worst mass shooting in the history of the state.
Yep. I was up in Maine one time. I went to visit some friends at a very famous school called the Hyde School. And
Okay.
it's where the very affluent people send their troubled kids, basically. And so we knew some people up there. And I went when I was actually trafficking cocaine on Amtrak and met somebody. And then I ended up going up there to connect. But so it was absolutely beautiful. Bath, Maine had Bath Iron Works. It had a lot of restaurants, very quaint, oceanfront. It had a
That's
big
what I hear.
castle.
I wouldn't mind checking out Portland one day, but I want to make sure this guy's taken care of way before we go out there.
There you go. So let's wrap the show up real quick. Check out Ignacio's book about the worst shootings in American
Worst mass
history.
shootings in American history, and how to stop them. So let me put a couple solutions out there, Bill. So since we're talking about this and things that can help people in the future, you should, if possible, get your concealed weapons permit where you're allowed. If you're in a state that's constitutional carry, which Maine is, others are. I think Florida has transitioned to that. Well, you don't have to. In Virginia, I have to get a concealed weapons permit, which is fine. I'm trained for that. You have it, but then these private locations, then they can ban you because it's private areas. So then you can't have. So let's say you go to this bar or whatever, and they say no weapons allowed. Well, like you said, they should have someone there who is armed that's allowed to off-duty carry, a security guard, something. Because if you're not going to protect the patrons, they can't be armed. Well, that's a loser. Then you're going to get killed.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
those are
there's going
bad
to be a
things.
lot. There's going to be a lot of liability to go around with this, especially if they cleared him and he got his weapons back or never took them.
Those are good questions. What happened there? Why was the ball dropped? And especially all these things, these threats he's made. You got to take it serious. What he put on Twitter, all that stuff's out there. So what happened with the Army side? Why isn't he decommissioned, right, or removed from his position as a sergeant reservist, right? Or why wasn't he a red flag? And maybe there should have been more stuff going on. I don't know. There's a lot of good questions to ask. I know people are going to
You
look
would
into this
think that
more.
Twitter gets alerts like Facebook or YouTube if somebody has inappropriate content that they're required to notify law enforcement, discreetly or whatever.
That's
But
another question. What's going to happen there?
I get the platform because we talked about something with the election with the president's attorney, or if you talk about what people are doing to kids, right away they take you down. But here's this guy, talking
They
about
missed it.
on public platforms, social media, mass murder, and all these crazy desires, and they leave him up. they leave them up and don't even do anything about them.
Yeah, that's a problem. Sometimes is they miss things and then they're targeted. That's why people are frustrated a lot with social media platforms. It's difficult. Sometimes they feel like that people get targeted and picked on, while the ones that should have their stuff out there. So interesting things here. Robert Card, Lewiston, Maine. A lot of questions are being asked. What went wrong here? This guy should not have his weapons, and especially with his mental health issues, voices talking, telling him to do things. That's all bad stuff.
Yep. Okay. So my a beautiful assistant here just said there's no further developments. So we're going to roll into the next show, but we're going to wrap this one up.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to say? Check out my books. Check out Ignacio's book. Links are all in the descriptions.
Yeah.
Former ATF, former whatever I was.
Yeah. You see my poster behind me, ATF Undercover there. Talk about my life and the cases I worked undercover, dangerous cases, repeat violent offenders, gang members, international firearms traffickers, you name it. It's in there. Everything else. Plus, a very good book that's doing really well right now on Audible. The Most Dangerous Crime Syndicates of Our Time, doing really well on Audible. And shout out to Sean Milo, my voice actor narrator, for that.
And I'm going to give you a shout out that you're going to be on Gangland Chronicles on History Channel as their resident expert on gangs. So
that's what we're working on. Hopefully it looks good, and I'm excited about that. Consulting and whatever else I can do for them, that'll be great.
I don't want to leave this without a thought and a prayer for the victims of these crimes. Yes. A horrific. There's going to be one horror story after another coming out about families devastated and good people killed. So we love these victims. We are here for them. We're trying to spread awareness, maybe how to prevent these things. So our prayers and our thoughts go out to the victims and the law enforcement that has to, put up their lives in safety and risk their families and their lives and they're being injured or killed. To try to pursue this guy who's highly trained.
Highly trained. He's a weapons expert. He's a firearms instructor. He's competent, and he's armed and dangerous, folks. Armed and dangerous.
So we definitely support law enforcement. And for all you people who don't, how would you feel if you were in one of these bars and there was no police officer or somebody around to take this guy out?
Yeah, so, if defund the police, doesn't work. Nope. You defund the police, who's going to take care of a nut job like this?
Right, exactly. Well, thank you for joining. Again, please keep an eye out for this guy, Robert Card. His picture was on the screen, and we hope that they wrap this up here this afternoon. Thank you for joining another episode of Steele Spotlight and William Steele True Crime with Ignacio Esteban and William Steele. God bless.